Good morning, everybody. This is Ryan here at MidNite, and today I wanted to make a multi-part video showing you the local app, how to use it, what everything means, just everything I can think of to show you about the local app. It's probably going to be about 4 parts, and this is part 1. So when you've got the local app running on your computer, it's going to look like this here. You're going to have the classics are going to show up if they're on the same network as the computer you're using. If they're not on the same network, you get into what's called port forwarding, and I don't want to get really mudded down in this one to explain that, other than to tell you that if you know how to port forward your classic in your router, you can use the local app offsite. And to do that, you would go up here to the application button, click configuration, and you would add the classics in here. Basically, these numbers you see here would be the public IP of your site where the classics are, and you would add that number in here. You would add the port number that you'd assign to the classic, click add, and then it would just go find them. The other thing you can do here too is the classics basically broadcast out over the network, internal network at your house, about every 30 seconds, and the local app will find those broadcasts. If for some reason you're having trouble getting connected to them for some reason, you can enter the IP addresses manually here, and the local app will know where to go find them. You should not have to add these like this. You should be able to just leave the auto detect checked, and the local app should just go find the classics for you, like mine is done on this screen here. The other thing under the application is the About. This will let you know the firmware version you're running for the local app. If you're having some issues or something that's not there, you can also check for updates by clicking this button, and it's going to go. And as you can see, mine is up to date. It says no update available. If there was a new version available, it would tell you, and you could install it at that point. So without any further ado, basically what you're looking at here is the local app open on the PC, and as you can see, I have 6 classics here going. Different ones, different names. You can see the name that you've assigned to the classic. We'll show you how to do that in a little bit. You can see the IP address and the port of the actual classic on your network. The energy today, you can see how many kilowatt hours the classic has made so far for the day. You can actually see the instantaneous power here. You'll notice that that's actually moving around a little bit. It's a pretty cloudy day here. You can also see right below that what stage the classic is in. Is it in bulk, absorb, resting, float, EQ, etc. These buttons here will let us view each classic, and we'll go there in a minute. These will let you remove them from here if you don't want to monitor it on this list. So that's basically the view you'll get when you first open the local app. And now we'll click on view to show you what a single classic looks like. And as you can see, there's a little clock up here on the dash, so if there's any errors or warnings, they're going to show up here, and this screen is going to be yellow or red. If it's yellow, that's a warning. If it's red, it's an error. And we could go to alerts right now, and we can see that the time is incorrect on my classic, and that's because we've just gone through daylight savings time and I have not updated my classics. So we'll leave it yellow for now, and we will explain that in one of the videos when we get to the configuration. Video 1, my goal is to show you how the local app works and what you're actually looking at here. Video 2 will probably go into the data logging and graphing, and in 3 and on we'll talk about the configuration, what all the menus mean. So again, this is just a basic overview of the classic. Up here you can see the name of the classic. You'll notice this little arrow. We can click that and we can switch between classics on the fly without having to go back to the main screen. There's a minimize button here. This takes us back to the view that we were at before we clicked view to see this. And then you've got 5 gauges and a couple lights. The dashboard lights here, as you can see, if you mouse over them, they're telling you what they are. This one is aux1. It's telling you it's active because it's on. This is aux2 and it's not active, so it's off. This gauge here is input volts. This would be the PV voltage at the moment, and as you can see, mine's around 86. This is the energy gauge. This is the kilowatt hours for the day. You can see I've done 0.8. And the next gauge is the power gauge. This is actually watts on the classic itself, that single classic. You can see it's doing 464 watts, and you'll notice that it goes to 1 kilowatt times 1,000, so 1,000 watts. This will actually scale. So if the sun was to come out right now and we bounced up to 3 kilowatts, this would go up to 3. This will auto scale upwards on the fly as needed to give you a better resolution. Next gauge over is battery volts. This is the actual battery voltage measured at the terminals of the Classic right now. And the last one is battery amps. This is kind of misleading because it says battery amps. This is actually the output amperage of the Classic. Excuse me. This is not amperage into the battery. If you had a Whiz-Bang Junior, it would show up down here, and I can show you one of those in a minute. But this is just the actual amperage out of the Classic, not into the battery. Then on the main screen, you'll see under status, you get the Classic model and revision. You get the mode that it's in this case solar, and it's on. You'll get the status, and in this case it's in bulk MPPT. The auxiliary status down here, you'll get the modes that it's actually in, whether it's in auto or off or on, and in what state it's in. Just like the lights up here, you'll see aux1 is on, aux2 is off. And then we get some temperatures here. We get the Fet Temperatures, which is the switching FETs inside the Classic. These will normally run in the mid 50s in most cases. Sometimes they go quite a bit hotter than that, but it's going to depend on your ambient temperature, how many watts of PV you've got, what the VOC of the array is. It's really nothing to worry about. When it gets up if it gets up into the 80s or 90s, it will back the current down on the controller to keep it from getting too hot. But if you see that in the 50s or even the 60s, it's not nothing to worry about. The PCB is going to run fairly close to the FET temperature. PCB stands for the circuit board, printed circuit board, and it's just a secondary temperature sensor that's actually pretty close to the FET sensor. So those are going to run pretty close to each other, no worries there. Battery temperature, negative 19.4 C. That's not actually the temperature. I'm actually using this sensor on this controller to monitor my freezer, so that don't get alarmed. My batteries are not really that cold. But this is where you'd see the battery temperature from the remote battery temperature sensor that comes with your Classic. And that's basically the rundown of the main screen. There are a bunch of buttons. We'll talk about those in just a second. We're not going to talk about these two in this video. This will be video 2. This will be video 3. We already talked about the alerts. If we click on overview, that's what we're seeing here. If we click on alerts, this is going to give us the any warnings or errors that we're seeing at the moment. And then if we click on info, it's just going to give us a little bit more detail about this Classic. It's going to give us the MAC address and the device ID, which are values you'll need if you want to connect to mymidnight.com. These are the two values you'll need to register that Classic. Again, we get the IP address again and the port number. Handy one here is the firmware version. You can see I'm running 2077. And then over here you get your timers, the absorb time and equalize time. These actually count down, so if absorb time is set for 2 hours, it will start at 2 and it'll count down to 0, and when it goes to 0 it'll switch to float. So as you can see, this Classic still has 2 hours left to do absorb if it gets there. Equalize is the same way. The equalize timer is set for an hour, and if I was to start an equalize, this timer would count down from an hour to 0 and finish. Then the last VOC, that was the last measured VOC of the array, was 105.2. Oh, you can see it just changed from 3 to 2. And below that is some debug registers that don't really have any value, so we won't talk about those. One thing I do want to do before we stop this video and move on to video 2 is I want to find the Whiz-Bang Junior for you. So bear with me for a minute and I will find that so that you can see. There we go. So this Classic actually has a Whiz-Bang Junior on it. So now I'm going to run through the gauges one more time, and then I'm going to show you the Whiz-Bang Junior menu. So again, remembering this is the input voltage, input volts, 182 on this one. Energy, this is the kilowatt hours that's produced today, and we've done 0.8. And the watts, again, pretty cloudy, rainy day here, so we're doing 300 watts. The next one is battery volts measured, 52.3. And then we have battery amps, which again, like I mentioned, is misleading. It's actually charge controller output amps. So this controller is doing 5.9 amps out. Then we move over to this Whiz-Bang Junior menu. So if you have the Whiz-Bang Junior installed, and to back up and say, the Whiz-Bang Junior is a current sense module that goes on the 500 amp shunt in all of our panels, or it's just a Deltec 500 amp shunt. This is going to tell you what's going on in and out of the battery at the moment. In this case, it's 0 amps into the battery. We're grid tied, so we're actually selling to the grid. Net amp hours is 0 at the moment. Remaining amp hours is 400. Actually, I think I've grabbed you the wrong Classic. Let me find the right one. So if you turn auxiliary 2 to Whiz Bang Jr., there we go. So if you set auxiliary 2 to Whiz Bang Jr., it's going to show this menu up here, whether there's a Whiz Bang Jr. connected to the Classic or not. Now you can see this one's actually active. Values are moving around. You see we have negative 3 amps in the battery right now. That means we're drawing 3 amps from the battery. We're down 198 amp hours. We have 744 amp hours remaining, and we're at 99% state of charge right there. So there's what you'd see with the Whiz Bang Jr. Again, a little deceiving because this one says battery, but this is actually output. This is actually the battery right here, system amps. That's what's actually going in or out of the battery. As you can see right now, we're positive 6 amps into the battery. Again, this is a grid tie system set to sell at around 52 volts. So because it's just right on the edge right today, it's hovering between a little bit of cell and a little bit of charge in the battery. But that's pretty much it on video 1. Quick rundown. Again, the minimize screen here. As you can see, these ones are yellow because the time is incorrect. They will show up green, yellow, or red over here. Green is all good. Yellow, there's a warning. Red means there's an error, and you need to look into that. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, post this one, and then I'm going to move on and do video 2, which will be data logging, graphing, etc. And then the third video will be configuration and what the menus all mean, and that may get broken into more than one video because I really want to spend some time on what all the values do and why you'd want to change them, etc. Thank you for watching, and look forward to seeing you in video 2. Thank you.